Welcome to the Enlightened Pet Behavior Podcast. I'm your host, Susan Light. In a world overflowing with conflicting advice and often misguided information, my mission is to be your trusted source for accurate, kind, and truly effective strategies to understand and shape your pet's behavior. Join me as we shed light on common challenges and work to foster a deeper, more harmonious bond with our beloved furry family members. If you find the show helpful and enjoyable, please consider showing your support. Subscribing, following, rating, reviewing, and sharing with your friends just takes a moment but significantly boosts the show's visibility, helping more pet parents find it. Thank you for your support. Let's get into it. Today's topic is a really fun one: play between dogs. What does healthy play look like? When should you intervene and how? How to set up the best play date for your dog. My guest is a certified applied animal behaviorist and certified professional dog trainer who specializes in canine play and in the evaluation and treatment of serious behavior problems in domestic dogs, including aggression. She began working with dogs in 1997 and has spent years working with clients in a one-on-one consultations, in addition to teaching group training classes and giving seminars about canine ethology for trainers, vet staff, and shelter staff, as well as the public. She received her BS in biology from UCLA and her PhD in zoology from the University of Wisconsin-Madison, where she studied the defensive behavior of neotropical social wasps and a nesting association between two species of wasps. Her research and scholarly publications cover such diverse topics as interactions between species that live together, defensive and aggressive behavior, evolution of social behavior, communication within and between species, learning, and parental investment. She's an award-winning author of 8 books on dog training and behavior, 5 of them co-authored with her mentor, Patricia McConnell, Ph.D. Her most personal book is Treat Everyone Like a Dog: How a Dog Trainer's Worldview Can Improve Your Life. She writes the animal column called The London Zoo for the Arizona Daily Sun, wrote the behavior and training columns for many years for the Bark magazine, and blogs for kinship.com. Her most recent book is My Dog's Mystery Adventure and Other Stories from a Canine Behaviorist and Dog Trainer. She is an adjunct professor in the Department of Biological Sciences at North Arizona University, where she has taught tropical field courses in Nicaragua and Costa Rica called Tropical Forest Ecology and Conservation, and a class for freshmen about the importance of insects to society called Sex, Bugs, and Rock and Roll. Please welcome back to the podcast, Karen London, PhD. Hi, welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me. It's great to be here again.
Yeah, thanks for coming back. This time I can see you, which is fun.
Yeah, I know it's a fun change.
So anybody that's listening, if you didn't know, Dr. London joined me before for an episode that's really great called Why Methods Matter, where we talked about why it's important, how you're choosing to train your dogs. So we'll link that in the show notes for anybody that wants to check that out. But today I'm so excited to talk about play because it's a topic I've actually never talked about. I talked to Amy Cook about using play as like therapy for their dog, but not about dog to dog play. So that was like human to dog play. So I talk a lot on this podcast about body language. I think it's really important for people to learn canine body language. But this is such a specific little language, the language of play. So I'm really excited. Thank you for coming to talk about it.
Oh, I'm always happy to talk about play. It's one of my favorite topics.
So I think a lot of people see dogs play and it's hard for them to know if it's good or not, if it's healthy, if it's constructive, or if they're fighting because some dog play is pretty rowdy. They're showing their teeth, actually mouthing each other. So let's start with what a question I get all the time is like, my dog's barking when they see another dog on the leash. I can't tell if they're afraid of that dog or if they want to go say hi to that dog. Is there a way in that situation for the person to know if they want to say hi to that dog or not?
It's really individual for each dog. And I think that question is incredibly difficult because the way dogs act when they're on leash and the way they act when they're off leash and in a potential situation where they could play is different. So I think that is one of the hardest questions actually to answer because if a dog is, barking at another dog, they might be, greeting them and they might be frustrated and they might just be having high arousal and they might be scared. So I think the barking alone is not a very good clue. And my feeling is you really cannot judge what they would be like in the context of play based on how they are on leash. And there are plenty of people who I've had clients like this. I myself had a dog like this, not very beautiful in his behavior when you would see a dog on leash, but excellent play skills off leash. So they're just completely different contexts, which I know is not a very satisfying answer, but that's how it is.
No, I'm so glad because I tell my clients all the time, as a general rule, please don't let your dog say hi to other dogs on leash because it's not a great situation and you just don't know how it's going to go. I've had clients' dogs get bitten. That way, even the person's like, oh, they're friendly. They love dogs. They want to say hi. It's not a great social situation for dogs to be on leash.
I completely agree. I am not in favor of on-leash dog greetings. I mean, some exceptions if, someone that they go walking with or it's their very best friend, very rarely. But I think a lot of what happens when dogs see other dogs on leash and, sometimes they get to greet and sometimes they don't, that causes a lot of uncertainty and frustration. And I think predictability is great. Yep, we're seeing another dog and we're moving on. That's how it always goes. And I think that eliminates a lot of this tension that dogs being walked on leash feel because they might be trying to convince you, "Please let me go greet them," or "Please let's get away." And if they just know it never happens, there's no need for that. I think predictability is a great friend to our dogs that I think should be utilized in the context of just don't have your dog greet other dogs on leash. So much easier.
100%. Yeah. So that's just so everybody's clear. We are going to talk specifically about a nice, safe place for the dogs to play off leash, inside, outside, whatever. So these play situations. What is important to knowing if two dogs are going to get along? Is size important? Is breed important? Is age important?
I mean, I think personality and play style is important, and some of those things can be correlated with age and size and breed, but I don't think age and size and breed are the key factors. It's play style. So if you have 2 dogs that really love to body slam or rough and tumble wrestle play, and then you have dogs who want to play chase, it's not compatible. And I mean, the way I've always thought of this, and I've said this many times, that would be like putting kids on a playground where one child wants to play checkers and one kid wants to play tag. It's like, what do you do with that? Both perfectly wonderful ways to play, they're not gonna get along, so it's about how they play. I do wanna address what you said about size because I think people are so often super worried about having a really large dog and a really small dog play, and with good reason. I mean, obviously, you don't want a larger dog to hurt a small dog, and sometimes big dogs, I think, get scared of little dogs, like, "I can barely even see you, like, where are you? You're under me," or something, but I think so many big dogs that I've seen beautifully sort of handicap themselves, they just lie down and let the other smaller dog play around their head, and I've seen some beautiful friendships with dogs that are mismatched, a 15-pound dog and a 95-pound dog, or even greater difference. I don't want people to be afraid of size, but monitored, obviously, for safety.
Yeah, absolutely. I have an 8-pound dog, and one of her favorite playmates is a 90-pound husky. And she gets up on her little hind legs, and we call it flirting. She like kisses him on the muzzle, and he's so gentle with her and so sweet. So yeah, size is not a huge factor, but I do understand if you get it wrong, there's a potential for injury. So you want to know the
Absolutely.
dogs.
Yeah, and I think in terms of, like oh, sorry, I was gonna say in terms of breeds, did you wanna talk about size more? I'm sorry, I got all excited.
No, no, no. I was going to move to self handicapping, but let's talk about breeds. Yeah.
Oh, well, I was gonna say the thing about breeds is that there are certain breeds that typically play in certain ways, like, a lot of herding and retrieving type dogs are really big on chasing, and typically some of our more northern breeds, Huskies, Malamutes, Akitas, are more likely to play with, like, hip and shoulder slam, so it's like you if a dog is being true to their breed stereotype, which sometimes they are and sometimes they aren't, then you wanna match them with that, but, I've seen plenty of, like, an American Eskimo playing with a Cocker Spaniel, it's fine, just depends on what they do. And I am excited you wanna talk about self-handicapping because I think some of my favorite dogs are the ones like, "Oh, they're being so dear." They know that their paw is the size of this dog's, head.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned it when we were talking about, bigger dogs that are good to play with smaller dogs, self-handicapping. So just tell people what that means, what that looks like.
Okay, it basically means taking away your physical advantage. So, say you have a dog that, I don't know, is like Great Pyrenees or St. Bernard or some very large breed, or even a very large lab or German Shepherd or whatever, or some mix. And, they agree to do some play bows with another dog that maybe is, I don't know, 20 pounds. You've got, I don't know, Jack Russell Terrier or some kind of terrier mix or whatever, Pekingese, and it doesn't matter. That the large dog will often lower themselves onto the ground or even onto their back. And partly it's taking away their physical advantage of their actual vertical height, but also it keeps them from stepping on a small dog, which obviously is one of the worries that we all have, or that they'll play bow by batting their paw and you'll see the other dog like doo doo, which I've never actually seen happen by the way, but it just feels like a risk. Um, when the older, a lot of times a bigger dog, and sometimes it is just an older dog and a puppy, but sometimes it's just they're very different in size. When the bigger one, usually lowers themselves to the ground and stays relatively still. So the smaller one, or sometimes a more timid one, it can be, is like free to explore without the risk of, being, um, you know, at risk of
Yeah.
the laws of physics.
Yeah. And it's really beautiful when they do that, like you said, like, it's so fun to watch, and yeah, they'll play different. If they get another big dog to play with, obviously, they're not gonna do that, but they do it for the smaller dogs. So self-handicapping is one thing that we look for with healthy play. What are some of the other things that we can look for to know, like, are they fighting? Are they upset? Or are they having fun?
Well, the most important thing, which is also a little vague but truly important, is that both dogs are having fun. It's not play if everybody isn't having a good time. We see this with any species, including humans. If someone's joking around, but someone's offended or they feel bullied, even if the other person didn't mean it, it's not fun. It's not playful. So we want that both dogs are interested in the play and want to do it. And one of the ways that you can sometimes test that is if you separate them, do they both go back? Or is one like, thank you? It's like, I'm over here by the fence now, or I'm under the bed or whatever. Play is only fun. Play is only play if everyone is having fun. And that's vague, but the signs of that can be just generally like a loose, bouncy, lighthearted quality to it. So the body is loose, the face is loose. I like to see lots of pauses in play. Uh, and the pause doesn't have to be long, even half a second will do. But then that's often like a chance for everyone to decide, oh, are we still playing? And then there'll often be play bows or other play signals or a chase to get things started. I also really, really like to see that there's some kind of reciprocity. It doesn't have to be that if they're chasing, they change, because they might play where one is always chasing the other, but there's just a little give and take, like pulling energy back, putting it forward. I think all of those things are super important. And then that there are play signals. I do like to see play signals in most play, so play bows, a play face, batting at the other dog, mouthing their front paws. Now an exception to that is lots of times, dogs that play together really regularly will dispense with play signals entirely. And the analogy I would do for this, like, I mean, say you've got siblings and one of them comes down the stairs in the morning, the other one is like leaps on their back and jumps on them when they're playing. It's assumed. They don't feel like they're being attacked. Whereas if some stranger did that to you on the street, they need to play like they need to indicate it's play.
Yeah.
I think what else? There was something else I was thinking of. Oh, I know. There's some holding back. If dogs are running, they're not running full speed. If they're leaping on you, they're not pouncing as hard as they can. If they're mouthing at you and there's lots of mouthing in play, they're not obviously biting with the full force of their teeth and jaws. That would not be playful. So a general holding back is important.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I think it makes people nervous, when they're very mouthy, but, 2 really basic ways that dogs play, like, the games that they play would be ones you've mentioned already, which is chasing each other, right? Or wrestling. So and there can be a mix of it, right? Chase, chase, wrestle, wrestle, chase, chase. But the wrestling is where I think people get well, the chasing people can get confused because if the dog that's running, like you said, is not enjoying it, if their tail is tucked, if they're kind of looking back, trying to be like, will you stop? As opposed to like, haha, are you still back there? Kind of like you want to watch that. But the wrestling, because it feels violent, because their mouths are open and sometimes they're, mouthing each other, it's hard for people to know um, what are some things that you would look for, like that self handicapping them, holding them back, like vocalizations, like if they're growling, does that tell you anything? Because usually a growl is very significant. In play, it can be a little confusing.
Yes, well, in terms of vocalizations, I'll address that first. What I like to look for in vocalizations, and growling is very common in play and not typically a problem. I like to see constant pitches. I don't mean like literally a monotone, but if I want them to be, they're a general like calmness in the same way that if I'm my normal self, I'm talking, yeah, my voice might modulate when I ask a question, but if I suddenly start going like this, there's a whole other level of, distress. So I want pitches to be fairly even. So if growling starts to get deeper and slower, or especially if the growling is accompanied by the body going still, which seems to often be associated with deeper and like more intense growling. I don't like that. And similarly, if a dog is just kind of like barking, but suddenly gets very, very high pitched, or they're like yelping or shrieking or whining, very high pitched things, I don't care for that. Vocalization is a bit hard to, you know, the thing about play, it's all very vague because play is
Individual.
it's individual and we know so little about it. Like we really don't thoroughly understand its evolutionary history. We don't fully understand its function, and we don't really, understand the different ways that animals play or, its development within individuals. But generally kind of a constancy of pitch is good in vocalizations. What was the other part of your question about about what you tell?
Vocalization and just like how can you tell if the mouthing is appropriate or it's,
Oh, yes, what you were talking about, like, when are whistle playing, what do you so,
yeah.
one of the things that I love to look for is mouths being open most of the times. A lot of times when dogs are wrestle playing, their mouths are kind of open, like they're like, it's like almost like they're jawing. If you see their teeth, yep, and they're biting at each other's face and necks, but not biting hard. So I think generally, open mouths. I also really like to see with wrestling, I look a lot at the general facial structure. If they've got like whale eye or their pupils are dilated like saucers, or their mouth suddenly goes closed and they're tense. Sometimes ears going back, if it's a very like still way and the muscles in their face are very tense, that can concern me. But ears go back a lot. I think dogs are like, let's get them out of the way. We're mouthing at each other. Um, but generally, again, I'm looking for, like, looseness in the body, and a lack of intensity, and I could imagine someone listening to me say that and it's not very operational, and I understand that, and that's sort of one of the magical things about play. It's so, there's such an art to it,
Yeah.
that but also that's very frustrating because we can't it's very difficult to define exactly what's okay and what's not.
Yeah, and so if they're concerned, so let's say the dogs are playing and you're like, "I don't know, this might be getting too intense." And you had mentioned, which I think is fantastic, breaks, even if it's just like everybody's separating for a second and taking a couple breaths and then going back into it. That's a great sign that they're both still feeling it and that, they're taking these breaks. And that helps keep the intensity from going too high, right? It's like kind keeps it in that nice happy range. But let's say they're not taking breaks. They seem to be having a good time, but oh my gosh, they're getting just a little bit you're just a little bit worried. What is a good, healthy, safe way to kind of interrupt and get them apart to take a little break?
There are different ways, and it depends on how locked in they are on each other. But one of the things I like to do is just I think of it as any way you can take the energy away from that. So I like to, if I'm near them, move away from them and like, kind of like clap, 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 or pup, 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 or let's go this way and kind of see if they're, if they're, sometimes dogs like they can't see you, they can't hear you, they're not with you want to see if that kind of that's like a test. Like if it's so intense that it's getting troublesome or leading to a fight, they're unlikely to be able to separate. And you can do it with you can say something that might be meaningful to them, like, "Who wants a treat?" Or, like, "Where's your ball?" Or, "Let's go for a walk," in which case you should actually go for a walk if they seem interested. And then, so just to see if you can sort of verbally separate them, I sometimes like to make kind of a loud sound, not to frighten them or scare them, but like, "Oh, that's an interesting sound." Like, I don't know, say I'm like, I have yeah, something like that. I do those. Or even to drop something like, say you have, like, a bag, like a large or like a rock, you drop it. You're not trying to frighten them, and if a dog is sound sensitive and would be upset by that, and this is very far away from them, not dropping things
Yeah, right.
because
Not chucking rocks at the dogs. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, right, of course. And then if you really can't seem to separate them at all, or they just don't respond at all, then I would physically separate them as gently as you can, it's easier with more than one person, and then see if they do wanna go back. Uh,
Yeah.
the it's difficult to separate dogs who are having a super fun time, and it's difficult to separate dogs if they're, um, have gotten very serious about their play.
Yeah. Well, this leads into my question of like, can we teach dogs to play better? Is if they're getting too intense, you kind of interrupting, having them take a little break and go back. If you do that enough, will they sort of learn to do that on their own?
I mean, some will and some won't. The 2 things I most like to do to help teach dogs to play better is have them have some play sessions with carefully chosen dogs where they're not bringing out the worst in each other, and start with some play sessions that are, like, 90 seconds long, 2 minutes long, just little ones, because lots of times it's that arousal that spirals up that causes trouble, so if you do it short now, it can be really frustrating. It's like, "Hey, can you drive over to my house and have our dogs play for, like, 1 minute and 70" in 17 seconds, but maybe then they go for a walk together or something, or you could offer you someone who does this to help you with your dog, like, "Can I have a calm for you?" or whatever. But
Yeah.
and the other thing I love to do is I love to teach dogs to play bow on cue, because
Mhm.
some dogs, if you can no matter how revved up, if you can teach them to play bow, then you're actually kind of helping them with that re-establishing that it's
Redirection.
playful, and they might do it kinda mechanically, it's a bow, but it dogs seem to understand it, and similarly is actually I said 2 things, but a 3rd thing, I really love to be able to call dogs out of play, and that can be good if
Yeah, I call them with a touch.
oh,
Touch.
just, like, do you touch their back end?
Oh, no, like asking for a
Oh,
target.
asking
Touch.
for a touch. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great way to do it. Yeah, and it just because it's pretty relatively I mean, it can be very hard in that context, but it's
Sure.
a relatively easy behavior. You're not asking them to, like, you know, roll over or go to their place or something where it's, like, gonna be harder for them.
Right.
I'm just kinda
Yeah.
come check in with you. I mean, I like to be able to do that. Just because, I think not only does it help dogs sort of separate in that situation, but I think it really helps them get regular pauses um,
Yeah.
in play. And I also think some dogs, if they're in a situation where it's starting to escalate, but they're like, "Oh, I don't know, is this okay?" And you call them out, it's like you have their back, and I think they often appreciate it. That
That
they're like, "Oh, okay, I thought so. Oh, this wasn't
yeah.
right."
And it's a good test, like you said, of like, can they do that in that moment? Because if they can't, if this is a dog that knows touch has a behavior and you're like, come touch, and they're just, they can't hear you, then you know their arousal's getting high and you should interrupt. So, yeah, I love that about the short ones. And we're so privileged with being in the dog community to have a lot of dogs available. So, to do those kinds of things, but that is something that a trainer can help you with is, knowing some good stable dogs that can help your dog learn how to play.
Definitely, definitely, and especially if that dog say you want to try about separating dogs, if that dog is also trained for, like, a touch call out, that can be really helpful, and
Yeah.
I was actually working with a dog a couple of days ago who has a very good touch, but we went out on a walk and the dog got a little bit distressed, and I asked for a touch, and the dog was like, "Bam!" I mean, not like in a mean way, but
Right.
tell
He's
it's when a dog treats
so aroused.
yeah, when a dog takes a treat from you and you're like, "Oh, they're pretty pumped up." So that it can also help
Mm.
you assess it or if they delicately come over. Of course, if they've been playing, they might run over to touch, and I think most people are gonna be able to tell the difference between their dog kind of running in because they were at speed and running in, like, sort of like they've lost control of you know, just control of their own emotions a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think just the more people really watch for play, if they are knowing what to look for now, the more comfortable you'll be. Like, and I think interrupting sooner rather than later is always good. Like you said, like
Yes.
give them a break. Let's see. Are you both still having fun? Come touch, both get a treat. And if they're back at it, they're having a blast. And if they're just like, oh, I'm tired, they're done. You know what I mean?
Right. "I'd like to sniff at this grass."
Yeah, I think people don't wanna interrupt it because they think the play is really important, and it is. But, it doesn't have to go on for a really long time until they're tired and they get rude with each other and have a bad experience.
Absolutely, and I would urge anyone who's sort of, like, looking at the dog and being like, "I don't know," like, say, call them out earlier rather than later. It's like you never know if you've averted a bit of an issue but if there was no problem, there's also no problem with you having pulled them out, and I would say something that I really think like this is my experience with my clients, is I really encourage them. If you're with someone else, like some other dog person and they're like, "No, no, it's fine," but you have that feeling in your heart, be really assertive. It's like, "No," like, just it's like you have nothing to lose by pulling them out when calling them out when it's not good, and there can be a lot of social pressure, like, "Let him play, it's fine," like, "That's just how my dog plays." It's like, "Yeah, well, the way your dog
Yes.
plays is, like, scaring the crap out of my dog or scaring the crap out of me." I mean, you don't need to say this and be really just say, I mean, I would just urge people to say, like, I've been experimenting and I find that this works best for my dog if I call him out now. Like just really be an advocate for your dog. And it can be hard when someone's like, "Oh, my dog just like tends to bite and sometimes there's a little blood at dogs' ears when they play." No, no, no. And it doesn't have to be that extreme. I mean, it can just be that feeling like you're a little uneasy. It's like if you're not going to look out for your dog, who is? So, yeah, I say there's nothing to gain by maybe being a little bit cautious in that. If you're wrong, you're wrong, but if you're wrong the other way, it can be a problem.
Yeah, and you don't want your dog to have a scary experience, because it can depending on the dog. Some dogs are incredibly resilient, but some dogs, it's gonna take a long time for them to bounce back from that, especially when they're young puppies. So we're talking about giving these dogs places to socialize and play with dogs. Let's talk about dog parks and daycare. Do you think these are good places for these dogs to play?
I think it depends on so much. I mean, dog parks, I know many dogs have had many positive experiences in them, but I really feel like many dogs experience the dog park not as a playground, but as a gladiator pit. And I can tell you, like, I specialize in working with aggressive dogs, and almost weekly, someone says to me, every time I take my dog to the dog park, he bites another dog. And I not
Are you taking them?
yeah, and I think it's because they really believe that they I mean, obviously, I encourage them not to go to the dog park for all the obvious reasons, but I really think they're like, "Well, if this is where he's struggling, like, I need to work with him there." Like, it's this is, a lack of knowledge, not a lack of caring in almost every case. I mean, like,
True.
in the entire, like, I guess I've been doing this for coming up on 30 years. Every once in a while, there's someone that just doesn't care that their dog is fighting other dogs, but that's happened, like, 3 times in almost 3 decades. Most people are just like, "I don't know what to do. I don't want it to happen, but I like, he needs to like, I know he needs to be with other dogs," which isn't necessarily true. So, I am very, um nervous about dog parks. I do think there are some places like, I used to take my dog to a dog park in Wisconsin. It was like I don't know, I'm sort of making these numbers up, but it was like 150 acres of walking trails,
Wow.
all fenced in, it could be off leash, and yes, it's not that nothing bad ever happened, but it wasn't one of those things where there's, like, 40 dogs and 6 tennis balls right at the entrance, it wasn't that. So that dog park was good, although I one time I went there and I saw a wolf hybrid who was, like, looking like this at my dog, and I was like, "Bugsy, come," and we just got in my car and went home and did a run at home. I mean, it's like, yeah, we'd been there 6 minutes and I don't care, but mostly it's
Yeah.
good. Daycare is very variable. I think there are some incredibly reputable daycares where they put dogs in special play groups and they're always monitored and they have them in crates or kennels part of the time, and it can be incredibly positive for dogs who, really need to get some energy out, really need to socialize, or if they've got some separation issues. So I'm
Yeah,
not
and they can't be home alone. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. I'm not as down on daycares, but I've also seen, like, streaming video of ones where I'm like, "Oh my heavens," like, and I just think that, a lot of people don't know that that's hard on their dogs. So a pretty big thumbs down to dog parks in most settings and, mix do your research on daycares.
Yeah, and it's because kind of the same reason. Well, one, the other thing about dog parks, and when you're talking about that space that you went to, it's not as much a thing, but there's nobody there to there's no employees at the dog park to make sure every dog is vaccinated, right? Like,
Right.
your dog can get pretty sick, drinking out of the water or whatever. Whereas that's one thing daycares should be doing at least is making sure those dogs are healthy that are coming in. And like you said, if they have enough space if they're trained, but I have seen daycares throw 100 dogs in a
I know.
room the size of a living room with one person kinda looking on their phone, supervising, and that, I think, is the majority of daycares, and so I think, proceed with caution, and they can pick up a lot of bad habits from being stressed all day,
Yeah.
like you said.
I do think and I think it probably depends on just particular what city you're in or what area, because I do think there's a big movement for daycares. And they do charge more because they have to. One person with 100, the fees are gonna be different than if they've got, like, 4 places where there's never more than 6 dogs and they have at least 2 people but I
Ye
do think there are some, some really wonderful daycares out there, and yes, something can still happen, but something can happen in our own backyard, but
Yeah.
there are some really great daycares, but don't assume just because they say, "We love dogs," that they're taking proper care of the ones that go there. That's what I would
Mhm.
say.
Absolutely. And again, it's like you said, people thinking that their dogs need to play. I think play is great for dogs, but not every dog likes being social. And there's kind of a normal spectrum that even each dog's going to go through throughout their life of sociability, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, dogs tend to be more playful when they're, puppies and adolescents and younger. Some dogs play their entire life. There are some dogs I actually met one a few months ago and actually said this to my clients because the dog doesn't behave at his best around other dogs. They were, wanting to have dog friends. I'm like, honestly, I think your dog would be happy if all the dogs on the entire planet disappeared. Like this dog is perfectly happy without any dogs. And I think they were very relieved because the dog's super soft and sweet with people. Like I mean, the kind of dog where you, like, literally wouldn't worry if it were roaming around a child daycare. Not that a dog should ever do that, but, like, I would
Right.
worry. And, whereas most dogs, I'd be like, "Well," ranging from, like, serious caution to, like, call child protective services. But this dog,
Yeah.
such an angel around people, really just doesn't like dogs and doesn't do anything terrible to them, but just is not happy to be around them. And I'm like, "Yeah, I mean, don't have your dog around dogs, or this particular dog." And I think the dog is really behaving.
Yeah.
I think most dogs like to play with other dogs to some extent, but it doesn't mean they like a big group party. I think a lot of them like to play with, like, one playmate at a time, like their best buddy or several dogs, but one at a time. I think one-on-one play sessions, which obviously are a little harder to organize than some things, are really great and underrated and not, taken advantage of often enough.
Yeah. I think dogs really suffer from this false expectation that we have that they should like all people and all dogs. And that's just an unrealistic expectation. And it's dangerous because if people are just being like, oh, they're dogs and just throwing them together. So let's talk about, we're almost out of time, so we won't talk for too much longer, but let's talk about some red flags. Like, like you said, like that dog was tracking you. You're like, we're getting out of here. You go to the dog park because there's only one or two dogs, but what are we still looking for? And when are we going to interrupt and get out of there before something bad happens?
Well, if one of the dog if, like, if you're thinking about, like, your dog, like, if they look
Yeah.
fearful, if they suddenly, any of the signals of anxiety, they're panting, they're whimpering, they're trembling, their tongue flicking, their eyes flare, their tail tucks, they retreat, they try to run away, sort of a very common behaviors, I'd be concerned about that. Also, anytime a dog goes really stiff, and I'm not talking about them stopping, 'cause you can stop, like, I'm still versus, like, I'm frozen,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like, the tension. So I often look for, like, tension in the face of a dog. I'm really leery of stiffening, very leery of the changes in vocalizations that I mentioned early. Anytime one dog seems to not wanna be there, huge red flag. Um, I also, looking for one dog that's sort of, like, going roughshod over other dogs, just sort of doesn't even seem to think they're there, like, if you see, like, a border collie that doesn't do proper outruns, they just run through a flock of geese and everything scatters. You don't want a dog like that. I don't like to see paw overs and chin overs where, like, if this is a body of a dog and here's their shoulder and another dog's regularly doing this or regularly putting their paws over, that upsets a lot of dogs. I don't like to see that. And I also don't like to see two dogs if they're up on their hind legs a lot. Not if it happens fleetingly, that sometimes happens in wrestling. But I find that a lot of dogs that are up on hind legs and sort of sparring, that's often more serious. I'm sure there are other things, but those are the ones that come to mind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How about humping?
Yeah, I don't find humping to be a particularly bad problem unless the dog that's
Mhm.
being humped doesn't like it. To me, humping and
Yeah.
mounting tends to happen when the dog it's just a sign of arousal, it's
Too excited. Yeah.
not sexual in nature, it's not necessarily bad behavior. So it's more of a problem because people are like, "Oh my goodness, this is so awkward."
Yeah.
But, I don't find it to be a problem unless the dog that's below is upset about it. It can lead to it's a sign of arousal, like you say, so it can lead to increased problems, but it in itself does not worry me as much as other things. Although I noted, and I wanna, pay attention, is that other dog upset? Are they getting even more revved up? But
Yeah.
I'm less
But it's
concerned.
a highly misunderstood behavior, I think, especially in
Yeah.
the context of play. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's just, like, it's just because I mean, obviously, when dogs actually are reproducing, they are mating, they are, like a male amount to female, and it is sexual. But
Right.
mounting in play is not sexual, but I think people tend to be uncomfortable with it. And I think that's
Definitely.
makes people more alarmed about it than they would be if it were something else. I'm much more concerned about like the paw overs and chin overs, like being over the body at the front of their body than at the back. Um, but I understand why it upsets people.
Definitely. Awesome. Well, I am bummed that we're out of time because I could
Me
talk
too.
about this forever. But I think that we covered a lot of good stuff. Is there anything else that we didn't get to that you're like, I want to make sure that I say this before we sign off?
Let me think. I mean, I just think that I think the reason that people think dog play is so important is they want their dogs to have fun, and that is such a beautiful sentiment. And I would say if your dog likes playing with other dogs and that's the way they have fun, fantastic. But if the goal is fun, sometimes think outside that, like play with you or chewing on things or going on safari. So I think play is a subset of fun, but it's not the only way for your dog to have fun. Because I think a lot of people feel bad if their dogs don't like to play. And I think wanting your dog to have fun is great, but you shouldn't be the one that deciding what's the right way to have fun. They're the ones that decide what's fun for them.
Oh my gosh, I love that so much. So true. Awesome. Thank you. Is there anything that you're working on right now that you want to tell people about? I know you have a book that came out right the last time we were talking. Tell everybody
Yeah.
like where they can find you and what you're doing.
Yeah, I mean, I'm seeing a lot of clients. I am working on a new book, but my most recent book is called My Dog's Mystery Adventure, which it came out last year, and it's actually a set of 50 newspaper columns that I wrote um, for the Arizona Daily Sun, and it's all about dogs. I also have one that I wrote before that called Cows, Ants, Termites, and Me. Both of these are names of columns, and that's like 145 columns, but it's about animals other than dogs. And those are both available on Amazon, all my dog books, including that and Treat Everyone Like a Dog, which I think is what we talked about
Yeah,
last,
that
which
one.
yeah, basically harnessing the skill set of dog trainers to influence the behavior of people. Those are available at Dogwise and Amazon and, at Trailblazing Tales also.
Awesome. I will link all those in the show notes for everybody.
Great.
And thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for asking me. It's a pleasure as always.
Thank you for listening to the Enlightened Pet Behavior Podcast. I hope you and your beloved pets have found valuable insights for a more harmonious life together. Please remember that this podcast provides educational information only and is not a substitute for professional veterinary or behavioral advice. If you need personalized support, please don't hesitate to contact me and we can explore how we can work together to achieve your pet behavior goals. You can reach me at enlightenedpetbehavior.com or via email at susan@enlightenedpetbehavior.com. This episode was edited by Monty Light. Special thanks to Mac Light for composing the podcast's music. You can find him at maclightsongwriter.com. Treasure those fur babies, and I'll talk to you next time.